I abandoned my friend mid-trip after endless phone distractions, realizing I was alone in our friendship. It felt freeing yet devastating. Throwaway account. I have many relatives and friends on this platform. A few years ago, I unexpectedly ended a lengthy friendship, leaving my now ex-friend stranded in a city. We are both in our early 30s, though I am embarrassed to acknowledge my actions throughout this ordeal. Initially, I felt heartbroken and like a terrible person because of how things concluded. However, I also felt a sense of relief. This narrative is lengthy, but I need to express it just once. Before my friend visited that summer, I voiced my concerns about the trip and suggested that postponing would be wiser. I reached a point of despair mentally, financially, and physically. I was in pain and gained a significant amount of weight. They were aware of this from previous discussions, concerns I had included. I earned approximately half of what they did and had a mortgage to pay. It was going to be financially challenging. I had changed jobs, resulting in a significantly lower salary. They agreed to cover half of the expenses at the end of the trip, which provided some relief. I was transitioning from the night shift and understood that I would find it difficult to adjust back to daytime hours with my limited paid time off. I would be responsible for driving them throughout the entire trip. They were unable to drive my car, though they never offered to help with that, and it was never mentioned, having been involved in several accidents in a short period. I could not afford another vehicle. I deal with motion sickness while driving, making it hard to stay awake when it strikes. It can also leave me extremely fatigued for the rest of the day and the following ones. I usually do not drive for more than 30 minutes, but this trip required hours of driving every day. There were occasions when I could not have my service dog with me, and I rarely go anywhere without him. I was unsure of how I would cope if something unexpected occurred. They told me not to worry. They were primarily interested in the food anyway. However, I couldn't assist with that either since I do not consume meat or most of the items they enjoy. They said that was fine and that they would conduct their own research. When they finally arrived, I noticed that they consistently seemed glued to their phones. We went to a restaurant immediately after I picked them up from the airport, and I cannot recall any moment when they were not on their phone. I assumed they were experiencing anxiety. They have a history of such feelings, and were using their phones as a means of escaping it. We attended a wine tour, during which they sang at me from their phone. I did not recognize most of the songs. They maintained full eye contact for the majority of the performance. I couldn't bring my service dog with me. To cope with my anxiety symptoms, I ended up drinking excessively. I felt deeply embarrassed about my behavior and reactions. I seldom drink. During our hikes, I would frequently glance back to see their faces illuminated by the phone screen. There were times when I had to wait long periods between 5-30 minutes for them to take breaks while they were on their phones. They did not appear tired, just preoccupied. I kept asking if they wanted to proceed, but they insisted they were fine and wanted to continue. I suppressed my feelings because I wanted them to feel happy and comfortable. However, the final morning struck differently and left me exasperated. That time, they were on their phone chatting when I woke up at 7 a.m. They had forgotten to eat breakfast, which was now cold, and were constantly getting distracted. I was trying to ensure they stayed on track with their responsibilities amid my own. I felt overwhelmed and upset that we were behind our scheduled departure. In hindsight, it turned out to be inconsequential. By the time we reached the hotel, it was past noon, and they had been on the phone throughout the journey, as far as I could tell. I felt it was rude to play my music or interrupt, so I opted to not eavesdrop. Growing up, I was taught never to interrupt someone's phone conversation unless it was crucial. At that point in the trip, I felt forlorn and was angry with myself for feeling that way. I didn't want to feel this way. I kept my feelings to myself, expecting they would end their call when we went to the hotel. Yet, even in the hotel room, they sat on the bed next to me and continued talking loudly. I felt unable to lie down and meditate the frustration away, and the call seemed never ending. It was after 1 p.m., and I felt trapped and unable to express myself. They noticed I was upset when I began muttering. They went to the restroom to continue their conversation, but I left for the outdoor bar to escape. I hoped they would message me once they were off the phone, but that did not occur. I am quite certain they continued talking after I left until they joined me at the bar later. After a while, I sent a terse text, which I immediately regretted. It expressed that I felt as though they were on their phone the entire trip. While that is acceptable, their lengthy phone call was overwhelming. I had intended to discuss my concerns with them, but the call never concluded. I was unwilling to wander around the city with them if they were not even present with me. It was clear my text did not go over well. They stated that I should have communicated sooner, fair point, that when they had their phones out, it was only to take photos, absolutely untrue, and that they did not appreciate being portrayed as selfish and inconsiderate. I never claimed that. I clarified that I primarily meant the situations surrounding driving and that I did not originally bring up the phone issue because I wanted them to feel at ease. I explained that I felt unable to interrupt their conversation to address my feelings, and that the call never concluded for me to speak with them in person. However, it genuinely bothered me. They insisted I should have interrupted them if I had a problem, and ultimately stated that I should not dictate when or how they use their phone. We went back and forth on this until I no longer felt comfortable with the idea of spending time together and suspected they were not either. Nothing I said seemed to alleviate their feelings, and they could not understand my perspective. From our conversation, I gathered that they might prefer to explore on their own, so I sent them their itinerary and city pass ticket in case they needed them. I also sent marked maps to guide them to all the sites I had planned to visit with them in the city from the hotel. After sending the itinerary, they accused me of abandoning them, maybe I was, and continued to express their frustration about not interrupting them or how I brought up their frequent phone usage. I insisted they interpret my tone in the messages differently from what I intended and asked them to meet me at the bar. They came to the bar looking furious, ordered shots immediately, I was already drinking, and began slamming their shots down on the glass table after consuming them. I feared the table would shatter. At this point, I had lost my frustration and merely wanted to reconcile. Anything I said only escalated the situation. They were trembling with rage. They yelled at me, twisted my words, and made hurtful, untrue accusations. I do not believe I said anything that warranted such a response, but perhaps I am mistaken. Regardless, I did not deserve to be yelled at in that manner. They continued to assert that I was always throwing things back in their face, etc. I do not recall doing that, but it made me think of their advice. Why didn't they mention it when it occurred? I felt guilty for them feeling that way, but it seemed hypocritical. Apparently, I had unknowingly been doing it to them for years. Yet they felt it was acceptable to never communicate their grievances, while my much lesser, in my view, issues were not tolerated. I did not point this out, but it certainly registered. There was more yelling on their part. At that moment, I recognized that I was finished, even if I was reluctant to admit it then. I knew I was wrong in some respects, but I never once raised my voice or spoke to them in the way they were addressing me. Ultimately, they stormed off in a huff to the opposite side of the bar. I made an effort to make the lengthy drive worthwhile. I packed my backpack and visited some of the locations I initially planned. I truly appreciated the long walk. Eventually, they messaged me, asking where I had gone and that they would head there now, among other inquiries. By then, I no longer believed meeting up was a wise choice. I would respond, but I did not strive to be seen. If we met up, that was fine, but otherwise, I was not going out of my way to receive the cold shoulder, or worse. Upon returning several hours later, they eventually appeared in the room. Rather than arranging for them to secure their own room, I provided them with the hotel room and keys, then drove home. I felt devastated at that moment and cried, but after some time, I realized it was refreshing not to have to walk on eggshells any longer. I often felt like I was perpetually pursuing them during their emotional episodes, while I found myself alone when I needed them to pursue me for once. I didn't have to worry about them blocking me if I expressed something they disagreed with. They have a tendency to do this with friends and family. Story 2. Aita for calling my classmate an acquaintance after she desperately tried to befriend me and my friend of years. To start off, I would like to request your understanding regarding my spelling and grammar, as my writing is not great. I've been contemplating creating this post, but I hesitated until now because my friend and I are uncertain about what steps to take. My name is Jane. I am a 22-year-old female, and my friend Edmund, a 22-year-old male, and I are currently facing challenges in our genetics class due to a classmate named Larissa, who is also 22 and female. This situation began at the start of the semester when I was seated in class next to another girl named Larissa. Normally, I initiate conversations, and I intended to do so, but she suddenly turned to me and stated that she had been observing me, following me, and noting everything I did for the past 4 years. I was taken aback and thought, what the heck? Because it genuinely unsettled me. She spoke about how we attended high school together and shared several classes. However, I couldn't recall her at all, which struck me as peculiar since she remembered details about me and Edmund. After class, I found the encounter odd, yet I decided to dismiss it and continue with my day, thinking it was just one class and that I could sit far from her in the coming days. Later that day, I attended another class with Edmund. We were thrilled to have adjusted our schedules to be in the same class. As usual, we sat together and worked on our assignments when the professor asked us to form groups for a first-day project. Larissa unexpectedly approached us and asked to join our team. Edmund agreed, and she sat next to us. While working on the project, Edmund and I collaborated and researched, while Larissa simply watched us do our work. When I suggested that she read some materials, she claimed it was against her Christian beliefs and that she couldn't read anything related to evolution. I glanced at Edmund and accepted her reasoning since I am not a Christian, and Edmund had never brought up any concerns about that, so I decided to let it slide. As the months progressed, Larissa became increasingly touchy with both Edmund and me, following us wherever we went. She even made the decision to drop classes she needed just to be with us, often stating that we were her only friends or that we were the only people she cared about. One day, she requested that I read an essay she had written about her mental struggles and her experiences with death. I commented that it was well written, and she continued to say that I would know since I write a lot. The conversation shifted as she expressed her Christian beliefs and insisted that she only read uplifting material. I simply agreed, but then she mentioned that she had seen me reading books like Pride and Prejudice and somehow assumed that I read explicit content in public, which was untrue. She affectionately referred to me as a slut in jest and made comments about our differing skin tones, with hers being pale and mine brown, which made me uncomfortable. Edmund noticed this behavior and often intervened, telling her that she was crossing the line. Although Larissa always spoke with a soft, sweet voice, her words sometimes felt sinister, especially when she jokingly said that we were her pookies and that she wished to keep us in her basement to appreciate us. This concerned us deeply. She began rummaging through our possessions and frequently uttered phrases like, "You will all be with me forever," or, "You too do not want to see my dark side," while inappropriately touching us. At one event, she lost her balance multiple times and resorted to grabbing onto my pants for support while I struggled to keep them from falling. She later confessed her feelings for Edmund, and I encouraged her to pursue him, but I confided in Edmund about my concerns regarding her attachment to him. We tried to distance ourselves from her, but she mentioned us on social media, posting comments about her pookies and claiming she was married to Edmund without his knowledge. She confirmed these notes to another mutual friend, and after everything, she began cutting me off when I spoke. Things escalated when she involved her mother by bringing her to follow us and question whether we hated her. When I denied any animosity, she began pushing her religious beliefs on me, inviting me to her church every weekend. While I have nothing against church, I'm currently finding my own way with God. Her insistence was overwhelming. She told me I would be accepted because her church welcomes people like me. However, when she implied that she thought I was part of the LGBTQ community, I had to clarify that I was not, but that I supported it. She reacted angrily and accused me of lying about my sexuality, claiming that I would come to realize my true identity later. One day, I became increasingly exasperated when she touched my shoulder, repeatedly asking when I would post about her. She reminded me that I was her only best friend since her father's death. I intended not to post anything until a friend informed me that Larissa was talking about us again in her close friends list. After she removed me from that list, I decided to post to regain access and see her updates. Unfortunately, this only encouraged her to be more touchy, and she contributed nothing to our project, which made her constant physical contact unbearable. I finally told her that she was merely a classmate to both Edmund and me, and that she didn't hold any significance for me. I posted a picture with a caption implying that she meant nothing to me, then quickly deleted it to free up space on my phone. Her eyes filled with tears as I conveyed that I wanted no relationship beyond friendship, promising to be cordial but nothing more. Afterward, she left in tears and continued speaking to Edmund. Following that incident, she ceased communication with me, which I found relieving. However, Edmund later told me that she started following him even more and behaving strangely. We then discovered she was telling people in our social circle that I had a crush on Edmund and that another girl and I were stealing him from her, expressing her desire to grab us by the hair. She has been spreading false accusations about me, telling everyone that I am mentally abusing her and hunting her down. While I feel sorry for her situation, the drama she is creating is unnecessary. I am at a loss regarding whether I inadvertently triggered this chaos or how to handle it moving forward.